these powerful words spoken to us by Jesus, that unless we forgive our brothers from our hearts, so will Jesus do to us. So will the Father, rather, do to us. Jesus emphasizes the necessity, the absolute necessity of forgiving others. He shares this parable, and he plays on the Aramaic word, which Aramaic word for sin is also the same word as debt. So if my brother sins against me, must I forgive him as many seven times? And Jesus says, no, 70 times. And there is no limit to how much you must forgive the debt. Because he says, look at how you have been forgiven. When you sin against God, he uses this image which would be equivalent to the national debt of a small country. There's no way he's ever going to pay it back. But then he sees, after being forgiven, he sees this other servant who owes him a couple $1,000s. A big enough amount, is certainly substantial, but able to be paid back. Because of not forgiving the debt, his debt is not forgiven. Now, when we talk about forgiveness, we have to remember forgiveness is not necessarily a feeling. It's not something necessarily in the emotions, but it is a choice. An act of the will. I choose not to hold this against this other person. And sometimes the emotions follow immediately, and sometimes they don't. And sometimes we're waiting for our emotions to feel better before we actually forgive. But we can't always rely on our emotions. Our emotions go up and down, they change. But we can still make a choice, an act of the will to forgive. And that's what Jesus is demanding of us, that we make that act of the will, because he can't demand us to change something we can't change, our emotions. But if we do forgive, if we do make that choice to forgive, eventually the feelings will follow. Maybe not immediately, but eventually. And so we look at this time of Lent, and it's an incredible time when we can spend time working on killing any resentment that we have in our hearts. And forgiving those who've hurt us whether recently or long ago. And especially working on forgiving even ourselves, who are sometimes the hardest to forgive because we know we have no excuses. So I'm going to invite you, we're going to have a little bit of time in silence, just to work on forgiving within your heart, asking the Lord to help you to make that choice to forgive those who've hurt you the most and those who've hurt you the least.